The following sentence sounds impossible today, but it's true. From 2019 to 2022, the Poet Laureate of the United States was an Indigenous woman, Joy Harjo, a member of the Muskogee Nation. Her book, American Sunrise, was inspired by the forced relocation of the Muskogee from their homelands east of the Mississippi to Oklahoma. She calls the movement of modern-day migrants, quote, a continuation of the Trail of Tears, unquote, and partially dedicated the following poem from American Sunrise to them. A Refuge in the Smallest of Places, by Joy Harjo. Someone sang for me, and no one else could hear it. When I had given up and made knife marks on my arm, or drank and gave myself away, or was given, someone sang for me, and no one else could hear it. When demons came with ropes and cages to take my children from me and imprison us. Someone sang for me, and no one else could hear it. Now I am here, in the timeless room of lost poetry, gathering up the destroyed and forgotten. Because of songs someone sang to me that no one else could hear but me. The place we gather rests on the unceded territory of Awaswas and Mutsun-speaking tribes of the Central Coast. The Amamutsun tribal band are descendants of indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization. Today, the Amamutsun are working to keep their traditions alive and heal from historic trauma. And we celebrate with them the recent purchase and protection of the traditional sacred land known as Huristak. So good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Santa Cruz County. My name is Andy Kreyche. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm serving as your worship associate today. Our congregation is served twice monthly by our part-time minister, Reverend Laura Horton Ludwig, and we often invite guest ministers to speak. Other Sundays, like today, we go back to our fellowship roots with a speaker from our membership. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious tradition based on shared values instead of a set of common beliefs. Today's speaker, for example, identifies as an atheist. But we do share a deep regard for inclusive love and intellectual freedom. A legacy principle of our UU faith is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And boy, are those three things needed right now. Today's service will feature participation by various members who, by their actions, support justice, work towards equity, and they model compassion. Their work and that of our justice team, working alongside folks of other faiths, makes our community safer and models the kind of behavior expected from a religious community. In this time when the world seems upside down, instead of relying on an arm of the government that runs counter to its name, it's up to all of us to be the Justice Department.
We light this flame to symbolize an awakening of the spirit of sanctuary. All of us moved by the Spirit are called to become a sanctuary network, a network of mutuality, a safety net woven with strong threads of faithful relationship to support one another in the calling to be sanctuary for one another and especially the most vulnerable among us.
And I'll add that those words were by Jim Weller, who's sitting right over here. He delivered those 9 years ago in a sermon he gave about this same topic, and we'll be hearing more from Jim in a minute.
The spirit of sanctuary is moving among us. The Spirit is an upwelling of love. It is the Spirit of life. Let us lift up our hearts. Fill us with the waters of compassion, the flames of courage, and the light of hope. As we move with the Spirit here, let us carry it into our community. Let the fellowship of hope and the Holy Spirit be with us all. Grace be with you. Amen.
Patty Bernstein has been representing our fellowship in the Child Safety Plan. Is that the right name? Child Care Safety Plan. This is a program to help families make arrangements for children in the event a parent is taken into custody by ICE. Along with Paul, Patty will host the hospitality table on this topic after the service. Patty?
On January 29th, the United States Capitol Police arrested Unitarian Universalist Association President Reverend Sophia Betancourt and other leaders from various religious traditions at the Senate Office Building in Washington, D.C. They had gathered there to protest the Department of Homeland Security and to advocate for the defunding of ICE. Reverend Betancourt calls budgets moral documents and states there is no moral justification for a budget that will fund the persecution of our immigrant neighbors, the slaughter of innocent protesters, nor the further traumatization of our children, which has taken place and had taken place during the first Trump administration. She calls on all people of faith and conscience to do everything in our power to end the inhumanity displayed by this administration and to restore the soul of our nation. She reminds us we have an ethical obligation to show up and declare these perverse actions will not be done in our name. I thank her.
Howard Thurman was an African-American theologian and educator who served as a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. Howard passed away, but still he speaks to our country, speaks to our community, and speaks to our fellowship when he says, "Community cannot for long feed on itself. It can only flourish with the coming of others from beyond, their unknown and undiscovered brothers." And we add today, with the coming of their unknown and discovered sisters.
Dear friends, dear neighbors, let's give thanks to whatever it is that brought us together here, that brings us together in this fellowship of love. I'm talking, of course, about the loving Spirit and about its latest incarnation, the worship team, and especially Andy, who put me on the spot and forced me to think hard about something that I care deeply about, sanctuary. So, sanctuary, along with its companion, solidarity, is a flame that always burns brightest in hard times. And that's why sanctuary is coming to us now. It begins here, in this sanctuary, where we give it to one another. Sanctuary's flame grows when we bring our little lights together, feeding on the warmth of one another, relying on ourselves and on each other, each doing what we can in many little acts of sanctuary and solidarity with those who stand, like Howard Thurman says, with their backs against the wall. I've been encouraged to tell you what brought me, an atheist to the bone, from a Tijuana shelter here to the Unitarian Church. But as Howard says, there are two questions that we have to ask ourselves. One is, where am I going? And the second is, who will go with me? And I want to get to those questions with you in the first person plural. That is, where are we going? and who will go with us. So I'll just say that about 9 years ago, I started to work and I started to meet and work with people who were in places that welcome and care for refugees along the U.S.-Mexican border. And I found that most all of them were people of faith. Sometimes faiths that were pretty strange to me. Sometimes I found clergy blessing them, but mostly I found ordinary people like us welcoming strangers. Many of them members of congregations that had been inspired, that had come alive with what I've come to call the sanctuary spirit. And the revelation that came to me then was this. I saw in these people welcoming strangers the same spirit that had been speaking to me for a long time. We understand it differently, or maybe we don't understand it at all, but no matter how we understand it or misunderstand it, it's the same spirit. The same spirit speaks to me, it speaks to you, it speaks to them. I don't know why this is so important, but it follows me around everywhere now. And so I found hope that this welcoming spirit, which is both secular and religious, might bring us what we need today, reinforcement. So I began to try to work in that spirit. And not long after that, in Star of the Sea Church, a small circle of friends were inspired to welcome and accompany a refugee, an asylum seeker. To be inspired means to have a spirit in you. And we did have a spirit in us. It was the welcoming spirit, and it, over time, brought many more people to join us, some from faith communities, many not, and we grew into the welcoming network. Now we are more than 150, all volunteers, self-organized into teams, circles of care around refugee families, and now, starting just this last month, around families affected by ICE abductions. We do just two things, in many little ways, and in a few big ways. We accompany and we support traumatized but resilient families, and we invite others to join us. That invitation, we've learned, is not an ask, but it's a gift. As Fred Ross taught Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, to gift our neighbors, it's our obligation, it's our responsibility, it's our calling to gift our neighbors with the opportunity to work for what they believe in. And then I found myself asking where to find my own spiritual community, where to find a loving spirit, a compassionate spirit, a welcoming spirit, a spirit without dogma, a spirit open to the wisdom of all faith traditions, including my own faith in human solidarity. Where else? Right? But here. So out of the Welcoming Network also grew the Interfaith Network, a movement really not just of clergy, but of lay people and even plain old humanists like me. We show up together in front of ICE detention centers and in immigration courts that have become traps for our friends and neighbors, and we plant the seeds of solidarity in the gardens of sanctuary in more and more of the temples of the Spirit like this around our community and in public places in our region. And we invite you to join us at our quarterly sanctuary meal this coming Friday. Now, to Howard's first question, where are we going? My answer is this: we are going to build a sanctuary community. We're already on our way. And what this means in the long and sacred history of sanctuary is something new. It's not an underground railroad. It's not a hideout for war resistors. It's not an individual church hiding someone. It's not a government policy or a police practice. It's not circles of care or even lots of circles of care like the Welcoming Network for vulnerable refugee families. Sure, it's many of these things, but it's also something more, something different. Because now, on a scale scarcely ever seen in history, so many of our neighbors have been turned into refugees in their own community. neighbors on our street, children in our schools, people who serve us and work alongside us and worship at the church down the street. So now we are compelled by history, by our own spirit of sanctuary and solidarity, to build a sanctuary community, a form of sanctuary that's not contained in formal sanctuary places, but somehow spread all around our community. How is this possible? What does it look like? How do we get there from here? Well, sanctuary carries many connotations, but literally it means a sacred place. How the heck does a place become sacred? Well, literally again, it's somehow filled with sanctuary spirit. Now, I think that spirit appears less in the words of priests and ministers than in the things that we do together, in the connections that we form, in the many little acts of sanctuary for one another and for others. I wish I had better words to say this, but I can say this: Minneapolis has been sanctified, whatever else that means. And another thing is certain, that this loving spirit has an enemy. That enemy is another spirit that's alive in our land, an ugly spirit of cruelty and anger and division, a demonic spirit that feeds on our fear and powerlessness, isolation and demoralization. This is the spirit that brands vulnerable people, indigenous predecessors, our transgender siblings, immigrants and refugees, our own elders, and ultimately any of us who resist, as human garbage. So there is an exorcism on our agenda. So how can we be a sanctuary community unless we are a community? And what makes us into a community and not a scattered collection of disconnected people? More than anything else, a community is formed by a common future, a common hope, a common direction. We must be going somewhere together. And that's the answer then to Howard's first question: where are we going? We here in the Unitarian Universalist Association are becoming a fellowship of sanctuary. And with our neighbors and other churches, neighborhoods and schools and local businesses and unions up and down the coast, we're becoming a sanctuary community. But wait, some of you ask, is this really the main form that the loving spirit takes today? Doesn't this take away from our other spiritual needs, other things we come here for? Of course not. This is a universal spirit, a universalist spirit, we might say. Unless we give sanctuary to ourselves and to one another, we have no sanctuary to share with others. So our sanctuary spirit consoles us as we share our sorrows and celebrate our joys. It comes with us on our quiet hikes in the forest and in noisy public gatherings. It burns in defense of our gender diversity, our fragile democracy and the rule of law, our demands for economic justice, our solidarity with the people of Palestine and so many other tortured places, and our defense of Mother Earth herself. But it burns hottest in our defense and in the self-defense of the most vulnerable among us. It is the spirit of resilience in those who stand, as Howard Thurman says, with their backs against the wall, and it is the spirit of solidarity in us who are safer for now than our neighbors. Never has the flaming chalice, the symbol, with its origins as a promise of sanctuary in the darkest times and places of fascist Europe, spoken to us so clearly as it does now in defense of immigrant and refugee rights here and now. And the good news is that the sanctuary spirit is already here. It's already among us. It doesn't need to be ignited by us and carried out into the community. It's already out there. Flickering? Sure. Weak? Sure. But no longer smoldering. It's growing hotter and growing higher. It's burning in the hearts and the actions already of hundreds, thousands of people who have already come together right here on the Central Coast in many little acts of sanctuary. and it's burning among us already. I'll prove it. Who among us has spent an hour or two on lookout at the Pulquita, that lovely little flea market in front of the Lutheran Community Church down the road? Stand, please. And stay standing. And who has learned how to help an immigrant family prepare a child safety plan? If you haven't stood up yet, stand up. And who has taken red cards from Terry to help people learn to know their rights and use their rights to share with our vulnerable neighbors? Stand up. And who has attended a rapid response training to serve as a legal observer of our neighbors when they're abused by ICE? And who has one of Mary's beautiful yard signs? There's some more over here. And who has joined in an invisible demonstration? Okay. And who has donated to the fund for families traumatized by an ICE abduction, which happens to have been our shared plate in January? So, take a look. Look at our little lights shining all over in this room. You can sit again for a minute or so. So we are going somewhere together. We do have a common future. That future includes elections and things like that, but it also includes Minneapolis, because the storm's coming closer. And we're becoming more and more of a sanctuary community as we prepare ourselves to keep it away and to fight it. Face it and fight it if we must, and beat it back and come out of it a better community. And we have a message for our brothers and sisters in this great and growing sanctuary movement. It is a message that we here in the Unitarian Universalist Association are uniquely qualified to carry, both to our secular sisters and brothers and to the Sunday and Saturday and Friday gatherings in churches and temples and other sacred spaces around us. We are not just qualified to carry it, we are called to carry it. Because as people of the Spirit, united by our values and our actions, not by a particular creed or belief system, we stand at the intersection of those two roads, secular and religious. And we know that both hear the same voice. We know that whatever form that higher power takes, it is there for every one of us. Personally, I think that should be the new meaning of our archaic label, Unitarian. But whether or not we even give it a name, it burns in all of us. We see it burning in those we meet, and we invite them to join us. This is not an ask, it's a gift. One vehicle for this is the new interfaith movement. This is not your pastors or your rabbis or your priests' interfaith movement. It is ours. It's not an arrangement among churches or religious denominations or a coalition of clergy, because to unleash the power of the sanctuary spirit, all of us who hear that voice must answer the call. Our congregations must come alive. Our sister congregations throughout this community must come alive. So again, how do we build a sanctuary community? How can we, in this tiny little temple of the Spirit, keep that flame alive and add our little light to the sanctuary fire that's starting to burn up and down the shores and into the hills and valleys of Monterey Bay? By taking those little lights outside the doors, by bringing them together with the other little lights that are flaring up, not only in 100 other faith communities, but also out in the homes and the schools and streets, filling our community with flames that feed on one another in many little acts of sanctuary, so that together we can ignite a revival of the loving Spirit. But what about Howard's second question? Who will go with us? That remains to be answered by time. But it also demands an answer from us. And we who answer yes to the call to build our sanctuary community, we already know one thing that warms our heart and gives us hope. We are going there, and we will not go alone. So may we go together. May we join our burning hearts with many other little hearts, little lights, that many other burning hearts and little lights that burn in 100 other temples of the Spirit and in the streets of Santa Cruz and Watsonville and in front of the gates of every ICE detention center from here to Minneapolis. And may the flames of sanctuary consume us. May it become a conflagration.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Ooh, one second. Here we go. Everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. With the light of peace, with the light of peace, I'm gonna let it shine.